The way we thought we'll structure this for today is Ashutosh and I will jam for a while. We've thought about a few topics that we thought might be of interest to us and to all of you. And then we'll open it up to questions and we'll take it with the flow. Okay. So on that note, my name is Upendra. I'm the founder of Idea Earth. I'm also a batch of 96, an alumni of Simsr. Ashutosh Khanna is a senior partner with Korn Ferry, a huge, rich, wide experience across multiple categories. I am also a member of the Alumni Association, and it's always been the endeavor of Arvind, Himanshi, the students, and everyone to try and create interaction opportunities between the alumni and between the alum and the current students of Simsr. So I'd imagine this is one other way of triggering those interactions. We are living in very different times. So we thought maybe an interaction via Zoom or any other video channel would be befitting of the situation. So without much ado, Ashutosh, a very warm welcome to AlumSpeaks.
Thank you, Upendra. Thank you, everyone who's behind the scenes, Arvind, to actually make this possible. It's always delightful to talk to Somaiya alumni. Really proud of being batch of 88. Sounds like it's very, very ancient, probably is, but any which way that I can help either the group or individuals, always happy to do so.
All right. So Ashutosh, Grapevine tells me you're one of the more approachable and friendly chaps on the Delhi Simsr group. So you're a crowd favorite. So that's why we thought we should start off Simsr AlumSpeaks with you. Apart from your charm, of course.
No, I'm just fond of talking to alumni. If there is anything I can do, I must admit that one did have from Somaiya a bunch of alumni that could help because we are the third batch. But certainly from school and college, and I went to the Air Force School and then to Hansraj, I've always had alumni that I've reached out to go out of their way to help and make life comfortable. So if I can, I think, and all of us
Awesome.
should, as alumni, look out for each other.
Okay, so Ashutosh, to kick this off, we are, of course, living in what would be termed as interesting times. And when we are typically in the midst of a crisis, be it 9/11 or be it other similar challenges we've had in the past, 2007 and 8 with Lehman was also considered an inflection point. So first off the bat, do you think the situation that we're going through right now is significantly different from some of the more testing times we've had in the last couple of decades?
So, great question. So I think every decade throws up some curveballs.
Sure.
And each one is different to one another. There's either a financial crisis, or there's a political crisis, or there's a social crisis, and in this case, there's a health crisis. This one's a bit different, but I think we've seen this movie before, and we've all read this book before. The fact of the matter is, this too will end.
Okay.
And I think the critical part is, till the time it ends, what are we doing about our lives and about the organizations, in case we are in a position to influence those organizations? What are we doing to better prepare ourselves so that when this ends, we come out on top of our game, on certainly better than what our own competitors and indeed our peer group, lands up coming out as. And if you look at every one of those events, you've always had some companies that have taken a contrarian view, some individuals who've taken a contrarian view. As long as you realize that life will change, and whichever way it's going to change, predict that, see what is going to likely be good for you, come out smelling of roses at the end of this.
So, Ashutosh, I have to take this up a notch. Whether you look back at Lehman or whether you look back at 9/11, rarely have you ever had scenarios where entire economies have literally come to a standstill in a situation outside of war. You and I were speaking the other day, and all of us know of businesses which have literally shut down and the revenues have come to zero. So, my question is, um, and this is en masse across categories, across segments, across income profiles. This is literally universal. So,
Right.
should we take this in the same breath as some of these more recent crises?
No,
Or
no.
is
So
this
like I said,
seriously more severe?
every, great. Thanks for pointing this out. I think this crisis is different. It's different because it's disrupted life. It's in fact rebooted pretty much everybody's business. So everybody's gone down to zero sales, or for the most part, 80-90% of the universe has gone down to zero sales in for a month or two, and then you're saying let's start again. Um, and some businesses may not have any sales, not just for a couple of months, maybe for a quarter, maybe longer. And everybody won't sustain this. So there would be businesses that are currently cash strapped, that don't have necessarily the right pieces, or the right business sustainability tools. Those businesses will find it difficult to keep their shutters open. But the way it does work in the world, while somebody's going to down their shutters, that means there's an opportunity for somebody else. And that's what I was trying to say. Can you imagine the amount of I have a morning walk partner who lives in my condo. He's the CEO of one of the okay, let me not specify category because there are only 4 companies in that category. But who said that and he runs up the number 2 company in that category, and the number 1 is a leader by far. Like the number 1 has a 50% or more market share. It says they're looking at it and saying, great. So they given out increments last week.
Wow.
And they're spending all their time training their frontline sales force and saying, when this ends, we want to come out on top because we know the competitor is firing or slashing costs, affecting pay cuts. The way the way this fellow is looking at it, saying this is a great time to invest. Currently, his CFO is scouting for the fact whether the number 3 or number 4 are ready to sell. Chances are they are happy to consolidate because they sit on cash. They have access to global kitty. The valuations have become very, very attractive. So if
Correct.
you talk to most VC guys or most PE funds, if they have the money, it's a great time for them to actually look at companies that weren't on the block earlier or were asking for just too high a price.
So, Ashutosh, you are at an amazing vantage point because you work essentially in the talent organizational design space in a nutshell, right? Of course, many other facets of it.
Yeah.
You quite often have to wear the hat of a recruiter, and of course, you need to wear the hat of the potential candidate as well. So you have an amazing vantage. You also work with a very large cross section of leaders, be it large corporates or what you might call the startup tag community, so to speak. Now, when you're looking at scenarios of zero to really drastically drop revenues, you're hemorrhaging on cash flows, right? What you spoke about earlier works great on large, healthy balance sheet scenarios. These are guys who have working capital, liquidity, and reserves to last them out, which is an enviable position to be in, access to capital. There is, of course, a very large number of companies, enterprises, which are not in that position. Now, what would differentiate a great leadership team vis-a-vis an other when they're in that crisis of hemorrhaging, and what should their view and perspective on talent be? Because you're literally bleeding every day. And then, of course, you'd love to keep the talent, but then you have those hard decisions to make. So, what sets apart a great leadership team vis-a-vis the others in a scenario like this?
So, let's agree that I think if you look at talent today, um, whether it's a worker or it's a CEO, I think everybody is pretty open to the tsunami around us. And so everybody, if I was to take a straw poll on this, um, you'd probably find about more than 90% of the people on this Zoom chat today happy to take a haircut.
Yeah.
The amount would also vary. The amount would be, I'm guessing, modest, because nobody wants to, announce that he's happy to or she's happy to take a 50%, 70% haircut. But the fact of the matter is, everybody here is happy to take a short-term haircut for a quarter or so, maybe take a deferred bonus, but really put shoulder behind wheel to make sure the companies come out of it. So you will find that um, talent is equally agile in terms of wanting to go the extra mile. But so are companies as well. No one really wants to lose people they've trained. Nobody wants to lose people they've invested in, thought of career paths for them, and then have those people move on to competitors. But the fact of the matter is, you do need to keep your, the doors of your organization open when this ends. I think that's where the banks are saying, take money and we'll figure it out, or we'll defer your loan payments and so on and so forth. But it's a very difficult situation. I fully agree. To keep your doors open. If your doors are open, when the lockdown lifts and the supply chain cranks up, you should be okay. Provided you've been able to figure out what your business strategy is going to be, because it's not going to be business as usual. So let me expand on that a bit. What I'm hearing is that it's the supply chain and more than the front end that's going to be actually critical for most organizations, whether it's retail, consumer, IT, diversified manufacturing, call it what you wish. There is a genuine disruption of supply chain. When companies, when factories go into lockdown or are closed for a long period of time, they need a maintenance period before they start to produce again. So it's not that the lockdown finishes on one fine day and the next day you are cranking up full production. Cannot be. So this is going to be a prolonged comeback, but yeah, it's going to start with the supply chain and then move its way forward. But the most critical part here really is, do you know what the new world is going to be like? Because what's changing is consumer behavior and customer behavior. I don't know whether people are going to go back to restaurants in the same way that they were earlier. When you've been earning less, I do not know whether you're going to go back to the discretionary spends that you were used to or your family was used to going forward. We are seeing broadly four kinds of recovery periods. One is a group of companies, what I'm going to call as hit and recover, which are companies which are restaurants, logistics, transport, tourism. They are taking the hit, they will recover. That recovery will take whatever 2 or 3 or 4 quarters, whatever it takes to come back to that. Then there's a hit and bounce back, the ones that are going to come back better than the previous ones. which are really apparel, beauty products, health retail, those kind of bunch of group of companies. There's a third bunch which is going to spike and then stabilize, which is really what I think are the staples and the instant food ones, which is what everybody's been kind of craving. Perhaps durables would fall into this piece as well, because everybody's been holding off on those durable purchases, whether it's an air conditioner, new cell phone, and so on and so forth. So that's going to spike. And then there are already in this, even in any tsunami, there always will be some buildings left standing. I think today you have a bunch of or industries that are chugging along nicely. E-commerce is certainly one of them. Um, I think grocery is another. So some part of FMCG that's with grocery, remote working, online healthcare, um, and I think online education and online entertainment. We are seeing things like Zoom. Their valuations are up. Certainly Netflix, Z5s, all Balajis, all of these platforms have more and more consumers. So I think these are just going to continue because this is the new normal. I don't need to necessarily go out to a movie hall to now see a movie. And I'm not talking about people here. We probably are early adopters of OTT. But let me just stop here and see whether I'm even made sense.
Sure. So let me kind of assimilate and crystallize this so that it helps the subsequent part of the conversation. At one end, we are broadly saying there are more vulnerable industry categories,
Yeah,
purely anyone who's in entertainment, travel, things like that.
yeah,
Then at the other end, on the lesser, least vulnerability, are your roti kapada makan, which is your
yes.
grocery, your clothing, basic stuff, right? Which keeps
Yeah, but
the food
also
on the
also
plate.
entertainment, because I'm people are
Yes,
sitting at home depressed. Entertainment is so essential. You got to watch something. I mean, the only thing that the news channels have is COVID. There is no
correct.
politics happening. There's no sports happening. There's no new entertainment, being produced. Nothing's happening. So whoever sits on the largest library is the winner.
Absolutely. So you're
Yeah.
right. So they're saying Netflix and Amazon have enough content libraries to keep them flourishing till June, July, August, depending on the player. So I get what you're saying. So the subscription guys are great, but the guys who survive on advertising, so print. I was having a chat with someone yesterday. I haven't got a newspaper at home for the last 3 weeks. And I am not alone in Bombay. And I'm sure it's something similar in Delhi, is what my friends tell me. So I get with you, but just to make this simple, you have the essentials and you have the more vulnerable. My
Yeah.
The other dimension I'm looking at this is you have the guys who are the teeth and tail. So you have the guys who are doing the sales, getting the business, and then you have the support functions. If I were to break this down, let's be in the most extreme category. If I were in the most vulnerable category and I am in a non-business function, would it be fair to say that I am really on the higher side of a threat level coming out of this
For
crisis?
for sure. You should kind of be evaluating some options. You got to, if you're going to run a race, you got to have the right horse you're riding on. Right?
Correct.
You're not going to win on a lame horse. But on the other hand, if you were, for example, calling up Hilton for a job, Hilton's not going to call you back in a hurry. You need to kind of figure out if it's not going to be Hilton, what's it going to be? And so you need to figure out where you want to get your next job going. And so I think you just need to uh, so let me come to this. So what you should be what should you be really doing? I think so. Let me take my and you're quite similar, and I'm sure there'll be half the people here who are quite similar, where we are on our second, third, fourth career. I moved from FMCG to advertising to now executive search, morphing into organizational strategy, perhaps something else later. I don't know. Um, if you're not reskilling yourself, and if you're not investing in reorienting yourself through some tools, some education, some experiences, then you're not setting your self up for a longer graph, so to speak, going forward. Then you might be petering off the cliff pretty fast. So broadly, that's really the piece. You're not going to have your career currently the way it is last more than 3 or 4 years. If it does, you're lucky, or I don't know. I don't know whether you're lucky because the new is always exciting and better paying.
Okay, I'm going to push, so with your permission, I'm going to push this a little bit further, right? So let's say I'm a dude who's been in the hospitality sector for 15 years, right? And we know it's really going to be brutal in that sector. I've largely been an F&B. I've been doing a bunch of stuff, right? Um, I'm not asking you for a specific solution, but how should a guy who's 15 years, guy, girl, it doesn't matter, someone who's been in a particular industry and category for 15 years, let's say in admin, hospitality management, what should I be thinking?
I should be
How
thinking
do I
health retail.
go about this?
I should be thinking health retail. I have a certain skill set. I have a certain competency, framework, which is ingrained.
Okay,
But I know people are not going to come back to the hospitality world in the same way that they were, at least for the next year or year and a half. It's not that hotels were running 80-90% occupancies with $300 ARRs. That wasn't happening in any case.
that's right.
And it's not going to get any better. So if I was you, I would look at joining a new hospital chain or some other form in which my skill sets could be redeployed. But I think more important is the kind of things that companies will start to look for. And so let me kind of give you the top of mind, whatever, I think, apart from whatever assessments that everyone does, hiring, your reportee or the next person whom you're hiring for. And I guess all of us are looking for some degree of skill set that we normally do. But over and above that, I think you'll start to look for people who have a higher degree of ambiguity tolerance, uh, people who are able to make sense out of situations that don't make sense.
Sure.
People who land on their feet a bit like a cat does when you throw that cat. Um, you should expect questions around your time management. Where do you manage time? Um, I think you should expect questions around communication, motivation, um, process development. Are you able to handle processes well? Because all of this is becoming part of your and my life as we lead the last 2 weeks and going forward the next 2 weeks. We ourselves are finding our days getting structured very differently. There is no chai break. There is no hi. Let's walk to the water cooler break. There's no sutta break. There's nothing. Right? We are managing our time very differently, and going forward, that's going to be the new normal, or at least part of the new normal. Why would a company now that has realized that people work equally well at home? And so I used to be suspicious of people who used to, as a company, work from home. Now I'm finding that, hey, everybody's working from home. Work is carrying on.
Sure.
So why do I need to have a 100-seater office? Why can't I do with a 50-seater or a 20-seater office? The rest can work from home. But then I start to look at people, can he work from home, as part of my evaluation criterion as well. So I think that's certainly going to change. For those friends here who are looking at giving job interviews in the next few weeks or preparing for them, I think do learn some tips. I'm sure YouTube has somebody or the other telling you how to do a great video call. You know, how to keep the camera angle right, how to light up your face, not have
Practical.
your camera in your nostrils, all of that. So cool stuff. So.
Cool. So when we look at the dimension of work from home, so I know this COVID situation has, so to speak, jettisoned us into this canyon and we're trying to get the hang of it. So when organizations now look at work from home, should they be looking at this as a more tactical stopgap over the next few months? Or should they be actually going and thinking really deep and saying, okay, hang on, how do I actually make collaborative distributed working on a more long-term basis?
You said it. You really have nailed it, Rupi. It is the way going forward. You're not going to have people continue to drive for 2 hours one way to go to office. It's already been proven to the skeptics that it is possible to work from a remote location. Um, I do believe people are not going to travel as much to do business. The first meeting is going to happen saying, let's do a video call and then let's see whether it makes sense for us to meet. Um, I think collaboration, alliances, all of that piece are going to substitute. I'm going to do everything myself. Uh, Once your revenues are down and growth is going to be slow in coming back, you are going to look at more cost-effective solutions. You will have no option but to look at more cost-effective solutions. It's not going to be business as usual. So you will see a lot more collaboration, a lot more niche um, boutiques who are willing to, do stuff for you at a fraction of the cost that it would have taken you to do it yourself.
So could we say this has kind of precipitated or accelerated a reality which was anyhow happening? It was happening in bits and pieces. There were some organizations who had done this for different reasons. Has it
You're
just
right.
accelerated the whole thing?
I think we've all got that SMS or that WhatsApp, right? Saying that it's not McKinsey that's driven digital. It's not your CIO. It's actually COVID.
Correct.
So everyone was trying to do it over the last few months. COVID's actually accelerated it. So and actually had left you with no option.
Okay, this is something we touched upon when we spoke a few days back. This concept of managers, and I think it's a little more accentuated in India with the designations, our definition of esteem defined by span of control, large teams, and so on. Now, quite a few organizations have figured out that they're extremely managerial heavy in terms of the count of managers is very large. And that has been an issue for organizations and the employees as well. So when you look at COVID, when you look at collaborative working, when you're looking at emerging industries, what is this new animal of a manager? And how does the manager, I'm looking at it purely from a gradation perspective, how should this manager evolve and be ready for the years to come? Because at one end, you're saying get skilled. But if I were to go to Udemy or wherever, do a course on digitization, my content knowledge absorption is not going to be very different from a guy with 2 years experience. So what is this managerial crisis and do you have any tips? And I'm sorry if I'm being dramatic, but I'm pushing the envelope here.
No. So I'll tell you, there's as we all go up our own career curves, there's one thing that differentiates great managers from average managers. And that's the quality of your decision that you make with as little information as possible. In any new situation, only 5 or 10% of that information is available. And when you're really at the bottom of the hierarchy, till you don't have 100% decision, you're not going to take that decision, whether you're a salesman or you're on the shop floor or whatever else. It's when you start to get more supervisory, is when you had that experience and you understood that, I will need to take a call irrespective. And that's when you wait for 70% of the information to get available to you before you make that decision your organization wants you to make. A great CEO should be able to make that decision with only 10% of that information available. But the quality of that decision is typically one that allows for enough flexibility that as and when more information becomes available, your decision doesn't need to change fundamentally as much.
Sure.
And I think that's really, where in general you will end up finding people move. But till now, I think what's happened is that we've seen a lot of people with a strategic mindset, a lot of people with the operational mindset do well over the last decade. I think because pretty much business models were set in every industry, except for the e-commerce one where everybody was trying to figure out, or in the technology piece where it's a perpetual, research in motion kind of piece. But I think a lot of that disruption is now going to start to happen where you will need to kind of put on your thinking hat. So you will need to have some degree of experimentation, fail fast, learn fast kind of, managers going fast. And so thereby a more agile way of functioning. So that brings me to the other piece. When you say managers, I think hierarchies of organizations have not changed from the last 700 years since Julius Caesar. Julius Caesar is the one who gave us that pyramid, right? The guy sits on top, the CEO, and then you have his generals, and then so on and so forth, garrisons, and then you have the foot soldiers. And organizations, for some reason, found solace in saying, if it worked for Julius Caesar, I do it. And so that's how the Industrial Revolution happened. And that's, I think, getting, I think we won't see this necessarily in about 10, 15 years from now. It started to break down already, where I think more and more organizations are saying, so this is whatever business line of business I am in, it requires me to do 20, 50, 100 tasks or processes to run to achieve what I have to achieve. So for each task, let a certain bunch of people come together, do that, disband, go do another piece somewhere else. I think that's the agility that organizations are finding is more useful, because your business situation is changing perhaps more rapidly than ever. The way I did my job 3 years back is not. If I was still doing that, I'd be without a job, and my company would be without a business model. So I think everything's really changed.
Okay, so all right, I'm trying to frame this correctly, but I'll be direct. That's my best. Is the terminology of job descriptions dead?
Yeah. What's a job description? We talked about this. A job description, nice piece of paper you show to your mentor saying, look who's called me for a job, or you give it to your wife and say, Rukmini, have a look at this, and give me a point of view. But I typically speaking, I don't hold much in favor of a job description, apart from it being a calling card and something to be with the candidate when I'm not in front of him, and for him to read the good glossy stuff. Ultimately, the job, let's agree, you will put down what the expectations of the organization are from the job. How many job descriptions have you read that have really inspired you, saying that's the job I want because the way this company has defined its head of marketing is so different from the rest.
Correct.
Frankly, most hiring managers have not spent time inspiring that, that document. Whenever I've given them saying, what you're telling me, what you want, we should put down on a piece of paper, and here is the piece of paper, then they get scared. But you know what? I don't know whether I should put this down. It might scare away candidates. Well, great, because then don't, and then
Sure.
allow yourself to then say what's the filter that you should be using. But I think what you should look for is just competencies that are sharp, unique, and what you want from that candidate. Look for what I call learning agility. Has the person been able to learn in an agile fashion from previous experiences, interpret whether success or failure? And it's fine. It's, I think, great to recognize failure. I think one of the best things that's happened in corporate world, in the corporate world last 5-10 years, is that failure is now being celebrated. Terrific. So has the person learned from that failure and use those learnings in another situation and come up with success? And so does the person have process agility? Does the person have results agility? Does the person have organizational agility, people agility, and more importantly, self-awareness? Because I think self-aware people who know what they're good at, what they suck at, are the ones who will probably find that agility. And I think agility should really be the only yardstick for, if I may call it, potential, because performance is typically what we land up using as a substitute for potential. Performance is not really potential.
Okay, so I'm going to pick up on agility because agility has several dimensions to it. And earlier on the conversations, and one of the questions which has come in from one of the people on this call today is, let's say I'm trying to move categories. So we go back to the example of I'm trying to move from hospitality to, say, let's say telecom, for an argument's sake, correct? Now, how do I demonstrate agility? So let's say I've been a sales guy, right? You, of course, have interviewed and evaluated hundreds, if not thousands of people, right? If I were to ask you to distill it and allow others to figure out, how do I pick up agility? Because it's theoretically great to say, but it's very judgmental. It can be biased. In many cases, the employee may not have been given the exposure or the chance at all. So if I'm sitting there, I'm hungry, I have the right attitude. As a candidate, how do I demonstrate agility to you so that you can understand it fairly simply?
Right. So, I need to be open to understanding agility as an interviewer. So you may be agile, I may not get it. Right. So
Yes.
unfortunate for you. Right? Terrible. um, but overall, I think write down some examples. And I'm sorry if I'm getting into interview coaching here and stuff like that. But let me go ahead. How does it matter? Overall, figure out what, if you're a salesperson moving from, as you said, hospitality to whatever, telecom. One thing is constant about salespeople, that there are, I think, some good differentiating things about great salespeople from average salespeople. And people like to think that it's aggression and it's very in your face. Not really. Some of the best salespeople I know are fairly introverted and very, very effective. Um, but do you have a strategy in sales? So if you were in hospitality, uh, which were your accounts and where were you getting your business from? And did you understand that less is more? A great salesperson is not necessarily somebody who just built numerical distribution,
Sure.
but is built weighted distribution. So have you understood, and at what point in time did you understand that, and did you implement that over and over again? Um, the second piece really is ultimately a great sales leader is somebody who leads people well as well. So, did you lead your team well, and what are the examples there? So, I was in FMCG sales, and you know that you get whipped by your boss or you whip your juniors, but at the end of the day, there is an equity balance that happens over a couple of pegs in which you build back that equity. Do you understand that piece? Do you understand relationships well? How do you nurture that relationship? How do you make that business relationship not just a business relationship, but and not just a transactional relationship, but a genuine uh, uh, relationship that stops at being friends and not just stops short of being friends, because
Sure.
ultimately it's a professional piece.
Hmm.
And then see whether that is somebody that that would transform well into telecom, which is not necessarily B2B, or it might well be enterprise telecom. But if you're looking at moving from B2B to B2C, then you need to kind of understand whether you yourself have um, want to whether you yourself have the gumption to go out, take a hit saying I will learn for 6 months and then give me my rightful place under the sun. So I'm not too sure telecom is a great place to join today, but that's my
Got it. I'm just going to pick you up on that. I was having a chat with Rajesh Srivastav. So he was telling me that I asked him, how did you move across multiple categories? And he said, my thought was very simple. Of course, he learned it after 3 decades, and it's what I call reverse logic. So what he said is, I worked in staples, I've sold liquor, I've sold deodorant. And he said the only way that I looked at it and it made my life simpler and I got lesser stress. He said, I'm fundamentally trying to delight the same set of consumers. I'm just approaching them through either different channels or different products. It
absolutely.
sounded very simple, but he said it took me a couple of decades to figure out what I was doing at the back of my head. And he said, I'm telling it to you so lucidly, but I took me 30 years to figure that simplicity out.
I fully agree. I think the best business development is great execution on whatever. Great customer satisfaction is your best business development. Just focus on that. You're sorted.
That's right. Okay. So is the concept of job security dead? And linked to that, is there any difference between being an entrepreneur and an employee today?
The question I have is, why do you really need big time? I mean, some degree of job security is always great. You
Sure.
need to know that the paycheck is going to be in the mails for you to continue to do what you're doing, and be motivated at it. But I think there are enough examples of both companies taking people for granted and people taking companies for granted. I think that's a bit of an overvalued piece on both ends. Ultimately, let's agree that you're working in an organization because you find great growth prospects, or at least I think you should be working in that organization that way, and the other way around. And if it's not going to work, then maybe your calling is somewhere else, and maybe you should really look at doing something different. But having said which, I am a believer in the fact that you should stick around in any organization for at least 3 to 5 years, three at the minimum. After five, I'm not saying don't, but there's nothing wrong in joining a company and being a lifer. But have a look at the end of 5 years whether the company is also being fair to you in the long run, with giving you the right opportunities, the right experiences, and the right growth.
So, Ashlo, should the question be organization, or should we say that let's keep looking at the work that we're doing and the assignments that we're getting and the teams that we're working in? There is a distinction.
Yeah. And so in the initial years, so I think it's always going to be your experiences. I think
Sure.
people who worked in GE for many years, for 10, 15 years, uh, and work because it was GE, suddenly find there are no takers for a GE resume
Yes.
because the business model was all wrong, and so if you were really senior, you get quiz saying, so why did you even hang around there for so as long as you did? So I don't think it's an organization. I think you should be true to what the job role is, rather than the badging of the organization.
Correct.
Yeah, employer branding, nothing to take away from it. It's terrific. People from pedigreed organizations like Cleavers and all will always have a job role or at least an interview. If you've spent 10 odd years there, um, because people would want to say that if you spent 10 years in Levers or in A Paints or wherever, then something must have and you didn't get fired, then you must have been okay. Yeah, but did you get those promotions every 2.5 years? Is a good indicator of knowing whether you moved up correctly or not. And if you did, you
Correct.
were stuck in the same role, then
So there are quite a few questions coming in, Vivek, Devraj, Ranjit, and I'm going to kind of put them together in one segment. They're largely towards, we keep talking about these great terms like flexibility, empathy, try and figure out agility, but you also touched upon it. In many instances, it is about the employer or the recruiter possibly not being up the curve or truly being empathetic as they have an opportunity of being, correct? So one of the questions is Ranjit, he's basically said that there have been quite a few times when he's explained that he's had a constraint with location. And he's gone through a few rounds, but when it comes to the final decision makers, they just kind of shoo it away. Uh, so quite often, how do we tackle this? And I hear this extremely often actually. And
about
there
location.
seems to not only about location, about all these fancy terminologies about flexibility, work from home, whatever, right? And there seems to be an asymmetry between the recruiter side and the persons who are looking for the assignments. And
Hmm.
it's fairly large. How do you counter that? Or do you just wait for that day when things get better?
So yeah, I think it's unfortunate. It does happen, and I think for the most part, I hate to admit it, but I think our community and some part of the talent acquisition community isn't the most, how do I say, upfront and candid. We should be like your doctor or lawyer. We don't necessarily land up behaving like one. But I think location, geographical preference, etc., is something that is going to be a problem of the past. I don't think that's going to be as critical. But having said which, just from a candidate perspective, if you really are wanting to be true to your career, then you should actually open up your geographical preferences, your geographical constraints. Everybody I know does have some personal problem or the other, kids in a school, aging parent. Um, but if you're not going to be having a satisfactory professional life, chances are you're not going to be a happy individual at all. So, and I get all the personal part of it, but I think you also need to give yourself an opportunity to reach your own potential. And I think being geographically bound to 2.5 metros is not doing justice to you, and you're not doing justice to yourself. I don't know whether I've
Correct.
answered the question.
No, no, I think it's a direction. There is only so much you can influence. But sometimes the way I address it is I say, even before you apply for a company or a role, pick up the phone, reach out to your network, have a chat, get a sense check. And a few conversations very clearly tell you whether you think culturally they would even be open to looking at your constraint and things like that. And I think that's a very
don't know
smart
about
way of
that.
approaching it.
I don't know about that. Upendra,
No?
um, I've done some work for companies based out of Ahmedabad, and at least three of them, or four of them, all four of them that I work with, I've said, listen, the candidate must move bag and baggage with family. This coming in on Monday and going back on Friday night or Saturday is not working.
Sure.
And so on two occasions, and these are both CEO roles,
Hmm.
um, candidate said, no, not going to work. Came up to the interview stage saying, okay, I'll talk to my wife if I get the job. And then rolled their decision back saying, nee, I don't think I can make this piece happen. Unfortunately, both those candidates have been without a job for the last 1.5 years, are wanting to go back to the same companies, saying happy to reconsider, but those jobs have been filled.
Got it. Sure.
So, I I get it. You don't want to work in Ahmedabad or in Chennai or in somewhere else in Tirunelveli, Moradabad. I get it. But somewhere down the line, if it is a decent metro that offers you schooling and a quality of life,
Hmm.
um, don't say no, because you that might lead you on to a better opportunity 3 years hence. So why do you want to block yourself off?
So, Ashutosh, honestly, I think you opened my mind a bit. It's a great takeaway. I think we can't hard code constraints sometimes,
Yeah, I fully
uh,
agree. Can't. Very well
right? So
said.
I'm saying be aware of it, and I think we're all fairly resourceful, intelligent human beings. We need to just step back, take the personal piece aside, step back, and say, "Hey, how else can I manage this situation?" I know there's so many people who work in Bombay and their families are in Delhi and similarly things like that. And things do work out and they're trying to figure it out.
Absolutely. I think we are more resilient than we give ourselves credit to, or
Very
credit
well
for.
said.
So, yeah. So
Very well said. So there's a question from Ranjit, which you also possibly can see, and he's in the consulting space, right?
okay.
And so he's basically saying, I've been looking to change companies and requested for a flexi location. And the same issue again. He's not able to get through. There's another one from Aman, which is interesting. So he is essentially from a consulting background. And
Hmm.
his question is, uh, post this COVID lockdown, should I be chasing my existing clients and holding on to them with everything that I've got, or should I be hunting and farming out new clients? What should I be doing?
Well, Aman, my advice is that wherever you have current relationships or ongoing work projects, go deeper. This is not the time to go wider. This is the time to go deeper. Don't be salesy. Reach out to your clients, feel their pain points, ask them how you can help, do work gratis if you have to, but try and understand what are the other opportunity areas that will open up at the time that the lockdown ends. That's what a great consultant would do. Get deeper and not wider. If you can build on your existing relationships, execute whatever you're doing as well as you can from a remote location. I think you will find yourself with a better quality of relationship with that client and a lot more work. And I'll talk to you from, well, I can't, unfortunately, my line of business is such, but I can tell you, we've been doing it last 2 weeks. And not because we wanted new business, but we just were, kind of wanting to handhold our clients saying, you're going through a tough time, tell us what we can do for you. We've got a better business pipeline that we did coming into the COVID piece. So just stick with your existing clients. Don't try and farm for, just farm for existing business. Don't go out looking for new business. Just do the small things well.
Okay. Um, So Ashutosh, we've touched upon this in different things, and this is possibly running in the minds of not only the people on this forum, but outside in the larger planet. I may be in a kick-ass category where a fancy report will say the vulnerability is very low, or I might be in in-your-face vulnerable category. The question is, as an employee, uh, is there a smart way of assessing whether my job is at risk? Or what are the questions I should be asking to figure that out? And I need to be brutally honest with myself. How do I really figure that out?
Okay. So, are you getting involved in the conversations you were earlier? Are you
Got it.
getting the same visibility? Are you getting the same degree of participation? Or has something changed? Because if 90% of the times, if you ask yourself this question, saying, "मेरी नौकरी जाएगी क्या?" When you sense something, you
Yeah.
sense subtle change in people's behavior around you, whether your immediate superior or your peers or your juniors or somebody in finance, HR, somebody, the word is out before you know it. And so people's attitude to you towards you would have changed a bit.
Mm.
Um, but a great way to do this is to actually then say, is this what you wanted to do? Or would you want, I, I read about this guy and I know of another one who got fired and they said, thank you. Um, but this is anyway what I didn't want to do. And went back to his desk, pulled out a piece of paper saying, this is what I've been wanting to do. So,
Sure.
And got rehired for a different role.
Got it.
But I think you need to be reading the tea leaves, um, and that's real politics. You just need to know that something has changed.
Got it. So I'm just calling out to the folks out here. We have another few minutes, so if you like to post any questions, please do that. So Ashutosh, I think even you can see the questions. Anything else you wanted to
Yes, I can.
specifically
I'm
address?
not wearing my specs, but that's fine. I've lost them somewhere. So
No worries. So essentially, Ranjit wanted a more
clock wants your
hard-on
plan.
response. So he was saying that he went through the first few rounds, but unfortunately, the senior guy wasn't amenable to the flexibility and location. So he's saying he went through the
Just tough
first few
luck.
rounds, but
There's nothing you could have done except gone and have a chat with him and saying, not fair, but yeah, I if the CEO's made up his mind on not being able to change location, then there is very little you can do about it.
correct. So you fight your battles, you win some, you lose some, but
Yeah, absolutely.
you live to die another day, or you die to live another day. I'm not sure what it is in these days.
I see. Very good.
Okay, uh, so just one last one. So of course, it's been many years since you passed out of college. But knowing you and when I spoke with you, you are a learner, right? So I don't think you're one of those guys who loves absorbing, you love learning, and which is why you're doing fabulously in your career and your
Frankly, I
approach.
don't know why somebody pays me the kind of money they pay me. I have the best job in the world. I listen to case studies all day. There are three companies. There are three questions company want answered: the what, the how, and the who. I answer the who. Currently, the who is changing the answers to the first two questions. And can you imagine what an interesting job, and somebody pays you money for that? That's terrific.
Correct. So Ashutosh, there's a question from Monica
Haji.
Khanna.
Hey,
So the
Monica, how are you
question,
doing? Yeah, I can't hear you, but
Arvind, can you
oh,
get unmute Monica, please? Arvind, can you unmute Monica? All right. So as Arvind unmutes Monica, so the basic question from Monica is, and I think a very honest question. Many students are like seriously shaken up, right?
yeah.
And these are students on the campus who are either getting into their internship or getting into their formal employment
yeah,
post. And there are many guys who've just passed out over the last couple of years.
yeah,
So these are unusual times which organizations haven't been through themselves.
yeah.
Uh, any words of wisdom apart from saying find the closest bottle of single malt?
No, I think yeah, these are tough times. Let's put it this way that I think your resilience and your tenacity will actually see you through this. Just don't lose hope. Don't lose faith. It's unfortunate that it's happened at the time it has in your careers, but it's no simpler for somebody who's a CEO who just lost his job because his business went bust. I
Sure.
know of a hospitality company's CEO who's lost 80% of his salary. Um, and those people have EMIs, unlike you who may not have EMIs currently. So yeah, it's a tough situation all around. But keep the faith. See whether you're in the right company, in the right industry. I think there are industries whose best years are ahead of themselves. Companies like wellness, overall healthcare, biotech, pharma, not profit. Not profit is, I think, the best years are ahead of itself. Um, we talked about some of them, the communications, ISP, those kind of companies. Um, See whether you want to build your careers in different places than where you are, where there are more likelihood of you having a longer run and a more fruitful run. But prepare yourself for the long haul and prepare yourself for multiple career future, not just for either sales or marketing or HR or finance.
Got it. So, Ashutosh, before we sign off, uh, kind of crystallize everything that we've discussed into kind of a nutshell. So, I thought I'll frame it in this way. So, we're literally in possibly, I would say, a perfect storm in a nutshell.
Yep.
Whether you're wearing a leadership hat, an entrepreneurial hat, whether you're a talent, a job seeker, wherever you are, right? It's a perfect storm. And very few people can honestly be very clear in terms of what and how are things going to emerge from this perfect storm. So considering the crazy amount of experience that you have and the network that you have and the talent that you've seen, and you've seen bunches of them, right? What do you think would make for a great talent which emerges from a perfect storm? What would set that talent above the rest?
Learning agility. Um, you just have to be that cat that lands on your feet every time. And we all know of some people, some friends, put them in the most difficult situation. They somehow muddle their way through. They're in big trouble, and either from parents or bosses or just situations, and they somehow come out smelling of roses. You gotta you gotta be agile.
So street smart, jugadu, getting back to local Indian pulse. Street smart, jugadu, thinking on your
Yeah, but
feet.
not jugadu, but yeah, you gotta think on your feet. You gotta be agile about life and about your situation. You cookie cutter approach is not gonna work. Not now.
Got it. All right. So I requested Monica to join in for a minute.
Yeah.
So Monica wanted to say hi. Hi,
Hey
Monica.
Monica, long time no see. How
Hello,
have you been?
hello. Really, I think this was one initiative which myself and Arvind we discussed, and we said we really need to use technology, and it's all thanks to coronavirus. I think we need to appreciate Corona, yeah, because it's kickstarted us into digital mode. Something,
Yeah,
especially in the education, in our area, academics, where we've always been thinking about digitization but never really did it. I think this is a wonderful opportunity and we've jumped at it. I think so. We passed the agility test, so to say.
yes, you have. Flying colors, Monica.
Yeah. So, but I think, I mean, as I asked you the question, the youngsters are pretty shaken up, you know. I think they
Yeah.
really need a lot of mentoring and handholding, and they need a lot of core inner strength to get through this difficult time. It's difficult,
Yeah, but
but
you just have to assure them that this difficult time will also get over. Much
correct.
like the good times get over, the bad times will also get over.
Yeah, yeah. The issue is, I think, you know, a lot of students, their summer internships are getting deferred or, you know, cancelled. And maybe some companies are not fulfilling the promise of a job. So it is a little, you know, a setback financially, emotionally, and a lot of things, you know. I think seniors, I think we need to handhold the juniors and take them through, you know. So
Yeah,
it's
unfortunate,
a
unfortunate,
responsibility.
very unfortunate. Yeah,
Very
but it is what
unfortunate.
it is. But somebody else is hiring, and they need
Yeah,
to, you know, climb some other tree.
that's right. Anyway, I really
Sounds good.
appreciate that you've taken out your time, and I've
No,
been
no,
noting
thanks a
down.
lot, Monica, for having me over on this one. Really, very
No, no, no. I think you
much.
need to interact more
Always
with
great
us.
to interact.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you
Thank you.
so much for being here. And thanks to
No, thank
Upendra. It was a wonderful anchoring.
Hey, thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
guys.
Peter, you're absolutely wonderful. Many thanks on this.
Thanks, Ashutosh. God bless you, and
Thank
look
you.
forward to the happy hour.
And
Thank you.
safe
Thanks,
landing through
Monica.
turbulent weather. Safe
Yeah,
landings.
yeah, everyone be safe. Everyone, take care of your loved ones and for yourselves. Stay home. Be safe. Thank
And
you.
before we sign out, a
Thank
huge
you.
call out, shout out to Arvind, Himachi, all the students. Damn good show. Takes a lot of effort to do this. And once again,
Yeah.
thanks, folks, and be safe.